Welcome back to another episode of the Bridge the Gap podcast powered by Revenue Reimagined. We have Nate Broome with us today, who was a key architect of Outreach's success, building their commercial team, which represented the largest percentage of revenue throughout his 6 years there. He moved on, most recently led sales at this little company called CaptivateIQ that you might have heard about, which is one of the leaders in the compensation management space, helping them transition and navigate the move that so many think is so easy, but actually isn't. And I'm sure we'll talk about this from SMB to enterprise. Nate, thanks for joining the show, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So you've gone through a lot of different iterations and changes, especially from SMB, velocity type sales. Take us back to a moment where you felt like your go-to-market strategy was out of control. And then what were you thinking about? How do I resolve that out of controlness feeling that you had?
Yeah. I mean, I think most sales leaders, a few of those just popped to mind. I think the biggest one that really stands out to me was probably later stage outreach, right? As Adam mentioned, had an incredible 6-year run there, and to a point, we were selling a point solution. Like everybody knows, we were selling sequencing, right? And then eventually we evolved into selling a platform that included, a Gone Compete product, included forecasting, some data analytics. And all of a sudden I had SMB and mid-market, maybe junior-ish type sellers trying to sell a platform after selling a point solution for so long, right? And so right away, you have to retune the enablement, the content, the decks, the business acumen. You're solving bigger problems. There's more stakeholders, what have you. And ultimately, how we got through that moment and how we ushered in kind of this platform selling at Outreach was really aligning people on on the overall strategy, what we were trying to do, just trying to solve more problems, right? And the framework that I've used for that, and I'll drop it here, but happy to answer questions, is first and foremost, we aligned everybody on hey, here's the strategy, here's what we're doing as a company, here's the direction. We had to get everybody clear on what their part of the strategy was, right? And then most importantly, we had to teach people how to execute the strategy, right? I've seen this too many times where people make the move to platform or more of a sophisticated selling or solution selling, and then they do all the planning, the strategy, the ICP work. Adam, you're familiar with this, right? But they do all the stuff, and then we forget to teach people how to actually do the job on the phones. Right? It's wild. It just happens over and over and over. So that was the big thing for us and how we got to the moment.
And I think one of the things that you were saying is the why. The why is super important. I was already talking, dude.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
We'll go to the why, right? Cynic, right?
Why
Start
not?
with the why, right? That's it, right? So, look, I was talking to somebody yesterday, one of my advising clients, and one of the things that we were talking about, related to the why, was that sellers can be really predictable sometimes, right? They're going to sell what's easiest, what's fastest, what makes the most money, right? And sometimes, while you're transitioning to any sort of transformation within your organization, it takes a minute for the sellers to catch up to that, right? Maybe it takes a minute for the comp plans to catch up for that, or the strategy, or whatever, right? And so it's really important that, hey, you talk everybody through, here's what we're doing, here's why we're doing it, here's why it matters to the organization and our customers, and then, oh, by the way, here's why it's going to matter to you, right?
So I agree that the why 90% of the time, sadly, is not explained, right? Whether it's a CEO, a revenue leader, a frontline manager, oftentimes it's literally okay, go do this. This is what we have to do. Why? Well, because the CEO said that this is the goal. Dale tells me all the time that he wants me to do something. I say, why? And his answer is because I said so. I tend to oblige. But generally speaking, I found that you get so much more when you do explain the why. Having worked, Nate, at all different size companies, how do you balance sharing the why with not oversharing? Because that's tough, right? Like it's you want to give the why, but sometimes the why isn't pretty.
Yeah, and oftentimes
How
the
have you
why
balanced that
is
as a
messy.
revenue leader?
Yeah, man, that's tough, right? Because especially in the last like handful of years, the why has been to stave off competition, to move from VC burning money to profitability and efficiency, to potentially rifts in the organization. So the ugliness of it and the heartache of it is real. I think for me, you had a post about this today, Adam, and I'll shout that out. It was about empathy, right? Is it like, I think for me, it's that you can only do so much, right? And I think if you're very consistent, if you're building up those equity points with your teams, with your leaders, you're doing those heart check-ins, what have you, that sometimes you can explain everything perfectly and you're still not going to nail it, but there's an inherent trust in the decision making, the track record, what have you, that can help kind of guide the moment. It might not make it any easier. It still might be messy and clunky and what have you. But that's what I've found to at least get me through the moment. Now, whether I'm sure I've had 100 examples where I've failed miserably and messed it up and mucked it up, and I've had good examples as well. But it's really empathy and meeting people where they're at to get through that moment. And I think the last thing I'll say is that look, most of my leadership career I've been managing and leading mid 20-year-old sellers, right?
Yeah.
So there is a reality. They've never seen some of these cycles that happen within organizations before, and so you just got to like continue to like guide them and mentor them through the moment.
Yeah, I think that's a big challenge with a lot of even leaders. Like you can be a good leader and still not know how to coach, still not how to pull through with empathy, the transparency that's needed to actually be successful. As you look back in, let's take outreach, since we were kind of going through that process, there must have been a fairly big gap from when you were going from a point solution to your enterprise motion and your platform motion. What was the biggest gaps that you guys saw? Was it that it was the wrong team selling or you guys didn't, do the proper transition to training them and almost like re-onboarding them from the initial process into like a platform motion?
Yeah, I would say we eventually figured it out, but it was clunky in the beginning, right? And I might get some fire text after this, but I'll say it anyhow in the confines of our small circle here and whoever's listening, right? Our biggest challenge was hubris, right? When we were selling a point solution, we had one primary competitor in SalesLoft who did a masterful job, really strong go to market. It was a pleasure to compete with them because they kept the bar high, right? But we did really well, right? We were doing really well in our niche, in our space. We were well thought of with our sequencing and kind of that orchestration tool that we had. That it was our point solution, our first real product, right? And then when we ventured into Clary's world, into Gong's world, into
everyone's world,
everyone's world, right? All of a sudden, it was a knife fight on multiple fronts, right? We just assumed that we were going to have the same type of success and momentum, right? And really what we're selling a whole new product, a whole new personas, as we talked about. And that initial hiccup that we had was hubris. Like, we're going to turn this thing on. It's going to fly out the door, what have you. And don't get me wrong, we had success.
Build it and they will come.
Yeah, build it and they will come. And we had success, but there was definitely whatever we thought our transition period was to enable the teams to educate the market, to create brand awareness and all that type of stuff. It ended up being 2 or 3 times longer, right? In part because we didn't start from a place of feeling like we were on our heels or that type of thing, right? And so eventually we learned the lesson really fast, but we did have to learn the lesson.
Yeah.
I want to double click on that. You said a phrase, 2 words that Dale and I talk about a lot that I don't think people put enough stock into or realize this is important as it is. Dale, do you know the phrase I'm going to say? I'm going to put Dale on the spot.
No idea. You say a ton of phrases, so who the heck knows what you're going to say?
Fuck off. Brand awareness, Nate.
Yeah.
There is, I find, whether you are at one point the behemoth that is or was Outreach, whether you are, Dale and Adam's startup, I don't think people put enough emphasis on, like, you don't have a brand and you can't just build it. I don't really care how good your product is. Let's assume you have a product that's going to solve whatever the problem is. You're not going to call Dale, tell them you have this product, and Dale's never heard of it, never seen it, has no idea what it is. And he's going to turn around and be like, shit, man, I've been waiting for this call my whole life. I can't wait to talk to you. Yet so many founders, CEOs, revenue leaders think that, just do some outbound. And like, if you do some outbound and get outreach and put people in a sequence, that, you're going to build go-to-market. How do you properly build and compound on brand awareness? How's that for a loaded question?
Loaded question. I feel like I need a marketing counterpart here to help with, help whisper sweet nothings about brand awareness in my ear. I think there's a couple things to it, right? I think one is you've got to have a high bar for the product. You got to have a high bar to take care of your early adopters within your customer base, right? Those people that are on the outer edges of your product and their advocacy or their feedback back to you, right? And so you're taking care of the kind of that core, right? You got to get case studies. Like, you got to get proof points soon and early, right? That might, I think, maybe tactically speaking, give a tactic here is that you might have to give the product away, right? You might have to go do prolonged, proof of concepts. You might just have to beg, borrow, and plead to get badged into their corporate headquarters to usher it along, right? Get access to the reps, whatever the thing is, right?
You mean people do this thing called in-person sales and actually go places?
You're hopping on a flight tonight to do the same thing, right? So I think
because we fundamentally believe that certain things have to be done in person.
I think that, look, I think, yes, there's a place for the in-person, and face is a place for sure. So, but I think that's, you've got to create that you got to do that initial work, right? And then you've got to have a really good go-to-market strategy and execution and orchestration amongst your SDRs, marketing department, product marketing, sales, and how sales is communicating to get the word out there, right? Of like, hey, these are the types of successes that we're having. We may be the new kid on the block, but we're formidable. We can provide value. We're an alternative to whatever was going on. And I think we more than anything, like when we entered like the call intelligence space at Outreach, right? Look, nobody has better brand equity, brand awareness than Gong, right? Gong is like universally beloved, right? And rightfully so, right? And so when we're inching in on their territory, they've got a high bar that we've got to cross a threshold on to provide value. So I think that's part of it. And then as a sales leader, when you're marketing, the last thing I'll give here is, as a sales leader, when your marketing leader comes and talks about brand, you got to give them the space. Because when they're talking about demand gen, it immediately equals leads, right? Or has some sort of ROI on leads and opportunities and meetings. When they're talking about brand, that doesn't necessarily translate to pipeline right away, right? And so sometimes it's hard for a sales leader to put to put their mind wrapped around that, right? But it's really important. The farther down funnel you get, the bigger you get, new product, platform, all that stuff.
I just tell sales leaders, if you don't understand awareness or brand, then just try to do cold calling with zero marketing, zero outbound, zero awareness of who you are. Like it's never going
Dude,
to happen.
I got a funny.
But so many people do it and think it's going to work.
I got a funny story like about that. So when I first joined Outreach and hopped on that rocket ship, I came in as a sales development leader. I was the first external SDR leader into to Outreach, right? So I was leading a team and what have you.
Did you have blue hair?
I did not. I was not.
All right.
I did not have blue hair, but Sam Nelson was part of the one of my early teams, and
That's awesome.
all Sam Nelson's kind of got the Kobe Bryant-esque thing going, right? Where it's like all these stories about Kobe Bryant being just a maniacal worker and doing all the little things and being a grinder. Uh, all those stories about Sam are true. So this community that he's built and his expertise are like it's well earned and forged in the fire, if you will. But yeah, when we first started going though, when Sam was part of this team, we were calling CROs, and one we probably called you out like one was that like, hey, look, what is sales engagement and who is outreach, right? And like that was like those early days of cold calling. I tell you what, it's really hard to book a meeting and get somebody's attention if those are the first two questions out of their mouth.
People buy from people. That's why companies who invest in meaningful connections win. The best part? Gifting doesn't have to be expensive to drive results, just thoughtful. Sendoso's intelligent gifting platform is designed to boost personalized engagement throughout the entire sales process. Trust me, I led sales for a Sendoso competitor, and I could tell you, no one does gifting better than Sendoso. If you're looking for a proven way to win and retain more customers, visit sendoso.com.
Well, and you're building kind of a market, like you're building a brand in a market, which is also difficult. I used to I ran sales for a company called Kite Desk, and you've probably had Julianne Sweat that was in your group. She used to work for me.
And the whole Tampa team, those are that's funny. That's a small world.
It's you're right. When those are the first two questions, I'd imagine it's very, very hard to book a meeting. And now, you have companies like Outreach, SalesLoft, Gong that have this brand recognition. And I think reps and we'll call it the next generation of revenue leaders who are going to go work at some startup because some founder thinks because they worked at Gong that they're great to go lead their startup. They're not. Separate conversation we could have all this brand recognition. And it's very easy to call a CRO on the phone when you're calling from Outreach or SalesLoft or Gong. And while you may or may not book the meeting, you'll at least get the time of day. They know who you are. And then you go work for, Nate's startup and you want to book the meeting for your new conversational intelligence tool. And they're like, who the F are you? You don't exist. These reps struggle with that, right? I often say to revenue leaders and founders, it's very easy to go from no-name startup to big company. Your adjustment is you're going to have a lot more policies and procedures and you can't just wing shit. But the brand recognition part, your job's going to get easier. Going from an Amazon or a Gong or a Outreach or a SalesLoft to Bob's startup, I've yet to see very many people who could successfully go backwards like that. It's so hard.
It's a mental shift for sure, right? It's not saying that it can't be done, but there's a lot more examples of it not being done well and people, flaming out by making that move. And I think, and by the way, I think in our market right now, in just the marketplace, I think that we are actually going through that type of moment where you had this generation of, I don't want to call it ZERP era, but call it pre-AI technology, right? Where there's all these companies that are in this 100 to 300, $400 million range that didn't go IPO, they don't have AI, have a strong customer base. And then now there's these young upstarts of AI companies that are starting to flourish, right? And so so I think you have this marketplace of leaders and sellers who are now looking at the new hyper growth companies, which are going to be AI type companies. I think Nooks and Clay are great examples of those. Glean's a great example of that, right? 11X, all that stuff, right? they're all going to have to contend with that, right? And so I think that there's a mental shift that you have to work through of like, am I comfortable, in ambiguity? Am I willing to actually do the work, right? Like that's required. Do I have it in me, right, to do that, right? Like I think that's a very real conversation that a lot of people are having, right? So right now.
Yeah, startups are just different. Jason Lemkin actually posted it about it the other day, right? You got to be willing to just do whatever it is you got to do, whatever job it is, and not get bogged down in the job description. And you don't have a month to make a difference. Like you just got to come in and figure shit out.
Yeah.
I want to shift gears slightly because I do want to talk about cold email, just knowing where you came from.
Okay.
Cold email is fucked, like to put it nicely. And I to some extent blame Outreach and Sales Loft for this.
I'll take the hit.
And it's fine. But like we went through this area. Dale's going to have a stroke because I just saw my camera flash and it's going to move. So I'm going to do it just to annoy him for a minute, and then I'll put it back. Sequencing, I think, had a valuable place. I still think it has a valuable place. But I think these tools have created this mindset of go wherever you're going to go, buy a list of, X number of people, maybe enrich it, maybe don't. If you're not, I mean, shame on you. Drop people in a, 36 email, 97 day sequence.
Yeah.
And maybe email 30, like Dale's nodding because we all get them. Maybe that 35th email is what's going to make me convert because 1 through 34 didn't. Like, what the hell happened to doing email the right way, and how do we fix it, man?
Man,
how's that for a loaded question that we could talk about for the next 3 hours?
I'm gonna get a call from Manny after this. You're talking about outreach and all the things.
I love outreach and I love Manny.
I think, and I do as well. I think, look, what happened and how do we get through it? I think like anything else, right? We had too much cake and now we're overweight and we have cavities, right? We took a good thing and we abused the hell out of it. And as the tools proliferated, right? So did the emails, so did, a generation of sellers who, didn't have to grow up without it. Right. So I think that's part of it. Right. Look, I think like anything else, it's a channel that just isn't going to have the return that it once did, right? And so how do you? And so the landscape has changed, right? So if that's not working, so a couple things is like, hey, how do you take a 6 Sense or how do you take a common room and an intent type data and start reacting to signals, right? Start to be smarter, right? How do you? Yeah, I think the newest one is like ChatGPT is writing everybody's emails to look personalized, but it's still missing quite a bit, right? So how do you still add the human element and stay relevant? And so I think there's going to be, I think the technologies will always shift. I think we saw that with Tout App back in the day to outreach to, the next generation of thing, but the humans have got to shift with it, right? And so you've got to be relevant. You've got to be timely. You got to be omni-channel. You've got to be true ABM and working with your marketing, teams and all of that, right? And so I think that's the way through. I don't think we're going to get these crazy conversions. Even with that said, I don't think we're going to get these crazy conversions, right? And then I'm going to die on this hill. Pick up the damn phone.
Well, I think
has everybody's cell phones now, right?
That's where sequencing does help, though, because it's just not emails, it's phone calls. It could be, pigeon mail. It could be like there's a lot of things that you can do in the sequence that's not just emailing. So people associate sequencing to emails.
But
that's a disconnect.
Yeah, but here's a thing I would say that as I coach sales leaders too, and I actually talked to somebody about this yesterday, where they're talking about 2 reps. Both reps were hitting their KPIs. Let's just call it, 50 dials a day. These are AEs outbounding, right? one rep was having massive success, right? Multiple meetings, progressing deals, like all the things you would want to hear about a rep, right? Rep B, same activity, same KPIs, but wasn't having nearly the amount of success, right? And I think that one of the things around all of these tools, the tracking, is that you have KPIs for days, you have metrics for days, you have dashboards for days, right? And so we have a generation of sellers that unfortunately are used to being managed to a dashboard and to a KPI, right? Maybe not even, maybe more so than even the revenue target and the quota target, which is wild, right? But the real secret sauce is the quality of work within the KPIs, right? And so I go back and looking at those sales managers and those frontline leaders of like, how are you coaching the reps within their KPIs? If they're doing outbound cold emails, how are you making sure that it's not generic, that it's personalized, and it's timely? If they're making calls, are you call coaching and making sure that, they're looking for connects, that they're doing quality objection handling, great intro lines, all that type of stuff, right? And so what's all this, I don't know what the saying is, but the rigor around coaching and managing, like, it's never been more true than today. It's just, I think we have a generation of sales leaders who haven't had to come up that way, and they're learning the hard lessons in a tough macro environment.
VP is a spreadsheet. VP is a dashboard.
Yeah. And look, I'll be honest. Like, it's like, hey, look, when it was ZERP era, that was the required skill.
Sure.
It was the required skill was, could you manage from a spreadsheet? Could you manage from a dashboard? Because it was about the engine and keeping the wheels on the plane, keeping everything flying. And then as pipeline decreases, as it gets harder, macro stuff starts hitting. Oh wait, can you actually deal coach? Can you actually coach reps? Can you actually, do transformation? And yeah, it's just it's part of the moment, right?
Yeah, the deal coaching, there's so few leaders that I know that can do it really well.
Yep.
Anyone could, and I think what most people think deal coaching is not deal coaching, right? Anyone could look at a Salesforce or HubSpot report and be like,
Yeah.
Okay, Nate, your next step is out of date, and you have your next yes. Your close date looks good. That's not deal coaching.
No.
That's not pipeline inspection. That's looking at a report, and we could all do that, and we don't need a meeting for that. So I think that to survive and thrive in today's go-to-market, what you've done in the past isn't going to work. Like you have to be in there. Like we talk all the time how we don't, we're not consultants. We don't hand you a pretty slide deck and tell you what to do. Like we're going to get all up in your shit. And I think that a lot of managers don't know how to do that in a way that doesn't come off as micromanagey, but comes off as a way of like, I want to help you. I want to coach you. I want to guide you and make you better.
Yeah, I've got an interesting take on that though, because I think I was talking to one of my old leaders who's now head of sales at a pretty hot startup now, and we were talking about management, right? And she's got some young leaders on her team, and I think for a period of time there, we were really fearful of this idea of micromanagement. Right? And what is micromanagement? I think at its core is like micromanagement is like leading from fear, right? Or maybe managing from fear. Actually, it's a better way to say it, right? And you're not pleasant to work with. You're not celebrating success. Like you're just all been able everyone's business, but you're not really providing value, right? And it like facilitates this hands-off approach, right? Of like, I don't want to be known as a micromanager, right? And I think that came true. I think for a lot of leaders that, a lot of young leaders that came true during kind of this like heyday, ZERP era heyday, where people were getting poached left and right. There was always like, people were paying astronomical amounts of, base and OTEs for first time sellers, right? Like, I mean, I lost like a small army of SDRs to AE gigs. We couldn't promote them fast enough into roles where they were, making tons of money in a first time closing role. Right. And so there was a fear of like, if I micromanage too hard, right, if I'm not, whatever, I'm going to lose people because they're going to have there's another thing out there for them to go. And unfortunately, though, it takes you away from coaching and the hard truth and the feedback that you actually need and to move your career, your development, your deals forward.
Coaching's important, and I think it's as much on the rep as it is the leader, right? Like I use the term culture of coaching a lot.
Yeah.
And if you don't want a culture, if you don't want a culture of coaching, if you don't want to be coached, I'm the wrong leader to work for. Like if you're looking for someone who's just gonna like, oh yeah, cool, sure, whatever. Like I'm not gonna be a hard ass, but like I am gonna coach you, and it comes from a point like I want you to be the best. Listen, it's been a long time. It's been a hot minute since I've been in a full-time leadership role. But I always said that the metric that I look at, other than numbers up and to the right, is how many people can I get promoted into a leadership role?
Yeah.
How many people can I get promoted where they want to go? If you're sales and you want to go to marketing, while it might suck for me, my job is to get you there because that's what you want to do. And that's what makes me a good leader or a bad leader. So I love the emphasis on that.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
We have time?
No, please.
Right,
no, we're going to go to rapid fire, but I want you to finish your thought. We don't have strict time limits here.
Really quickly, right? Like I think
you don't have to be really quick. We don't have strict time limits.
Oh, there we go.
Dale's never on time for a meeting, so even if he has one right now, he's going to be late anyway. So just keep.
I love it. The zinger towards Dale. I love it. Reid Hoffman wrote a book way back when with some PhD type, and this concept that they talked about in that book was about the alliance, right? About the company and the employee, what have you. And back in our dad's days, right? Like my dad he got a job at 18 and he didn't leave till he was 60, right? Like that was my dad's life, right? And what have you. And I think now that's not true for any of us, right? That's not in this era. And so how do we make the tour of duty of a 2-year, 3-year, 4-year stint with our reps, with our leaders, right, super valuable, right? And I think that's to your point. It's like, yeah, it might be painful, but it's only painful on that first go. Because if you could establish the culture of like, hey, look, I'm going to develop you, which means that I need you to lean in. I'm going to lean in with you. We're going to have some hard truths and hard conversations. But guess what? I'm going to get you wherever you want to go. You want to buy that first house? Awesome. You want the promotion? Awesome. You want to go and be a leader at another company? Great. Let's go help you do that, right? Whatever your thing is, right? But then the people coming behind them is gonna be like, oh, if I lean into Adam, if I lean into Nate and to what they're giving me, I'm going to get to where I want to go. And there's a track record there. Right. And that's got to be the social contract, if you will, that we operate in today's era. At least that's what I believe.
It's a great way to look at it. All right, let's get into some quick rapid fire to wrap this up. It's never as rapid as I'd like it to be.
I'll be quick.
But that's okay. What's the hardest leadership lesson that you've learned?
Not meeting people where they're at and treating people like a number. Right? Is that when you get stressed and numbers are tight and you got to make the number, got to make the quarter, not putting people first, putting the number first, right? And you might muscle your way through the moment and get that deal in, make that number or whatever, but you absolutely ruin credibility. You ruin the long-term value of that relationship or what you could have got out of that team.
That's a good one. What's a piece of advice that you once agreed with, but now you completely disagree with?
Grow at all costs.
That's a good one. Yeah,
I think that's it was right for the moment, but we've all paid the lessons back. So yeah, grow at all costs is. I definitely don't believe that anymore. All about efficiency.
How things have changed.
What's
a leadership mistake you made that looking back, you still are like, man, I regret that?
As I was prepping for this, I was like, I'm going to get that question. And I was thinking back to it.
Just like a job interview.
So my so I'm gonna apologize to Curtis, to Scott, to Paul, Megan, a bunch of others, right? But my very first management gig, right, was at a small Seattle startup, and got promoted from being a top rep, and I effectively came in and was a first time sales leader. I was a terrible first time manager because I was trying to replicate myself, right? I was trying to this worked for me. This is how I'm motivated. This is how I like to be talked to.
Yeah.
This is how every management, I didn't read any management books clearly because that's what they all tell you not to do. That's what I did. And so for that first team that had to pay the price for my leadership development, I apologize.
That's a great one. Last one as we wrap it up. If there's a revenue leader listening to this right now and they're trying to bridge these gaps, these go-to-market gaps that they have, what's one thing that they need to hear right this minute?
You're not alone. I think that's the big thing is that, especially VPs, CROs, right? Heads of, you're one of one in an organization, right? Your peers have different, metrics and things that they're held accountable to. That's maybe not as hard as easily as defined as revenue and ARR, right? And your CEOs and your boards have different things. You got to be the captain of your ship for your teams, but you're not alone, right? Chances are, if you call another sales leader, there's going to be a high degree of empathy and understanding. We all have those dark days, right? And
Call
so,
Adam.
and I know as sales leaders, yeah, it's call Adam, but I think as sales leaders and then as men, we're taught to show no weakness, right? And so we kind of hold this facade, but there are dark days even in the happiest of revenue times, right? So phone a friend for sure.
I love that. I it's so hard to do it alone. We talk about this all the time. And if you try to go at it and do it alone, I can't imagine. As much as Dale drives me crazy, I was having this conversation with someone the other day. I don't know if I could do this if I had to do it alone. In fact, I know I couldn't, for a variety of reasons. Phone a friend, get advice. Don't think you know everything, and don't be afraid to say I don't know as well.
Yeah, it's
Nate,
amazing.
Thank you so much for joining, man. We appreciate it. I am excited to see what is next for you. And thanks for dropping all your advice and tidbits today.
Yeah, it's great. Man. Adam, a pleasure. Dale, a pleasure. And if anybody needs any help or advice, I'm around. Just DM me on LinkedIn, and happy to help.
Cool. Thank you, sir.